Welcome to the new unit for Intro to CSS. We are starting a whole new language of coding. So what is CSS? I know you are dying to know. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. It is the language for designing web pages. CSS adds your style. You have been adding style already, but this is an even easier way to do it. Now remember, you should be taking notes. Pause at any time so you can write down what you need to before moving forward. Content versus style. So HTML defines the structure and content of our web page. What goes in what order? Top down, left, right. CSS was developed to define the style. When HTML first came out, there really was no intention to make it stylish, right? New stuff came out, so we could, but the most efficient way to do it is through CSS. So this is HTML, right? Before we add any styles, when we just add our basic HTML tags. Our resulting web page is top to bottom, and it's black and white. Now with CSS, we can change that. We can have the same HTML content, and without changing the HTML content, just adding CSS, we can change how our web page looks. So it goes from this to that with CSS. Now, even just by changing your CSS, by keeping the same HTML content we have, you can make your web page look like that. The blue parts are a little bit thicker, right? Same HTML, different CSS. Now you're like, oh, that's just a tiny change. CSS isn't that crazy. Wrong. Moving forward, web design is primarily CSS. So, same HTML content, your web page can look like that with different CSS. So all three of these pages have the same HTML content, but they all look different, slightly different, very different. So CSS uses, we can design the web page by changing its colors, its font, its spacing, its alignment, size, and a lot more. Really, if you want to change something, you can Google how to change this in CSS, and you'll likely find it. CSS can do a whole lot. There's no point of me listing everything it can do. However, it's important to know that it standardizes the style across an entire site. So when you've been working in HTML, on every web page you've had to change the headers, you've had to change the font, paragraph, the list color, yada yada yada. Using this, you only have to do it once, and it standardizes it across every single web page, saving you time and sanity. So CSS syntax. Syntax means how do you type it, what does it look like? So this is a CSS rule. It is super important you understand the vocabulary of the next couple slides. If there's any notes or things you need to memorize, it is this. You have to understand this vocabulary. So this whole thing you're looking at is a CSS rule. We will break it down in a moment. Just know the whole thing is a CSS rule. This is a CSS selector. So that first part, this right here is the selector, and just know that it's surrounded or followed by curly braces. The selector defines which, let's not say HTML element, which, we can say element. It defines what we are styling, what this rule applies to. It's not always the whole element. It could be one little element here. That's semantics. We'll get into that later. Just know the selector selects what we are styling. In this case, it would be an H1. The declaration. It's inside the braces where we define the style. So each line is a declaration. So this CSS rule has two declarations. And a declaration consists of a property, value, pair. So the declaration is property, colon, value, semicolon. This is a declaration. The property, in this case font size and color, is what feature we are styling about what we selected. So in this case, we're styling font size and color of our H1. So the property is the feature we are styling. The value is how we are styling that property. So in this case, we're making the feature, font size, 60 pixels, or the feature, the color, red. So the value is how. So to review CSS syntax, you have the selector followed by the curly braces. Everything we style goes inside the curly braces. You have two declarations, and you could have as many as you want. In this case, I'll reiterate, in this case it says two declarations because it's two lines, or two property value pairs, I'll say. You can have as many declarations as you want, and this whole thing is a CSS rule.